and a lot of important issues worthy of discussions. I want to take this opportunity, as I normally would do, to welcome those of you who are joining us from West Coast Berbice in Region 5. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And those of us who are joining us on television in Region 6, Berbice, welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And to our friends at Freedom Radio from Rob Street, Georgetown, welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And last but not least, to the tens of thousands of you who are joining us on Facebook Live across Guyana, the Caribbean, North America, Europe, Asia, and further afield. Welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News. I want to begin by apologizing for not appearing in this program for the past 2 weeks. I was on travel duties in many jurisdictions, and that prevented me from being with you. So I apologize, but we are back tonight with a packed agenda, as there are many, many issues that I believe are worthy of commentary. And I want to get straight to the point. I see many of you have joined us already. Arjun Jawahir, Tony Das, Ravi Jaichand, Radha Rampargas, Pam Singh, and so many of you. Welcome, Richard Stanislaus, Shanti Dukram, and so many of you. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. So, we had a very successful event last Sunday at Babujan, Port Morant, Quarantine, where our party celebrated the life and legacy of the founder, Dr. Chedi Jagan, and his wife, Mrs. Janet Jagan. We were prevented by COVID from holding these activities, which we have been holding annually for a number of years, and we resumed the activities last Sunday, and the turnout was massive. The crowd was huge, but what was most important was the multi-ethnic and multi-racial composition of the crowd. And I wish to echo the sentiments of our General Secretary, Bharat Jagdeo, when he said that there is no other political party in Guyana that can amass a crowd that was as diverse, a crowd that was so mixed, and a crowd that was so ethnically composed as the one that we were able to amass at Babujan last Sunday. It therefore once again demonstrates the point that we regularly make, that the People's Progressive Party Civic is the most multiracial political movement in the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. And every day we are working to make our party even more inclusive and even more reflective of the demographic composition of our country. And we are succeeding in every endeavor that we make in that direction. And that this brings me to our Saturday outreach. Saturday, some 11 members of our cabinet, led by Prime Minister Mark Phillips, led an outreach in Victoria on the east coast of Demerara. The event was held at Victoria Community Center. It is common knowledge that Victoria is an Afro-Guyanese village, and most of the surrounding villages are dominated by Afro-Guyanese. Traditionally, the PPP would not have been able to assemble a crowd in these communities. Saturday, the community center was overflowing with hundreds of residents of Victoria, Golden Grove, Haslington, and other surrounding communities such as Belfield. And there were persons from Enmore there as well. Again, massive crowd, 11 or so ministers, more than half of our cabinet, were present. Dozens of issues were raised by residents, and there were ministers there with supporting teams from their ministries, and the issues were recorded. Residents were allowed to speak very freely, and the issues raised, some of them were addressed immediately, but most of them were recorded and will be addressed in due course. These are not issues that can be instantaneously addressed. Many of them will require follow-up actions by the different ministers and different ministries. And the promise was made that these follow-ups will be done. But the point is that there is no other political party, whether in or out of government, could have gone into communities that are not traditionally their communities and attract a crowd of that size and the crowds that we are attracting now wherever we go. It is a testimony to the hard work of our government, the vision of our president, and the work that we did while we were in the opposition for those 5 years. When we were in the opposition for those 5 years, as a political party, we made the public admission that we need to do more work to make our party more inclusive and to bring in more Afro-Guyanese in particular and Amerindians into our fold. We admitted that the base of our party consists of Indo-Guyanese, and we made a pledge that we will work to expand that base. And that work commenced while we were in the opposition, but historically, it is something that Dr. Jagan had commenced in 1950 when he formed the PPP as a multiracial movement. And from then to now, we have been working consistently as a political movement to achieve this goal of uniting the people of Guyana. National unity has been and will continue to be a foundation pillar upon which our party was built. But in recent years, we have intensified the work and we are succeeding. And we will intensify even greater going forward. And that is why right across this country, we have outreaches of the type that we saw Saturday being done by groupings of ministers as well as ministers individually. I myself have several that are ongoing and several more upon which I will embark in the coming months. It is these collective efforts as a political party and as a government that culminated in the results which we saw at Babu Jan Sunday gone. It didn't happen by the waving of a magical wand. It is through hard work, dedicated work, focused work, and we are seeing the rewards. And the rewards are not for political aggrandizement. Bringing our people together is for the national good. All or any honest political leader in this country will recognize quickly that the major problem affecting our country going forward with the pace at which we would like it to go forward is the failure of our people to unite. Because you have politicians who have made it their career to divide our people along ethnic and racial lines. Some of them do that because that is their only way of surviving. If they do not appeal to race, they disintegrate. Why? Because they have no other platform upon which they can stand. They do not have a platform of delivering promises. They do not have a track record of development and progress. They do not have a track record of good performance in government or even out of government. The only glue that keeps them together is the spewing of racism and racial hatred. That is their platform. And that's why they can't win an elections. They can only try to rig elections. When they win elections, it is by rigging. They have never won a fair elections in Guyana, other than in 2015 when they had to collate. And now even if they collate, they cannot win anymore. Because the coalition was allowed an opportunity of 5 years in government, and they abysmally failed the Guyanese people. I don't need to use up valuable time in this program to recite the litany of what they did, how they violated the Constitution, how they trampled upon the rights and freedoms of the Guyanese people, how they took away lands from the farmers, how they increased taxation, how they did not attract any substantial and substantive foreign investments, how they chased away investors from this country, how many persons they destroyed by not employing them, how they destroyed the productive sectors of our country, how many sectors they shut down. I mean, I can go on and on. That is what they did in the 5 years that they were in government. And the people of Guyana witnessed it. You see, because we were in government for a long time, over 2 decades, persons began to forget the old PNC, what they did to this country, and what their track record was in government. And more importantly, we had a young generation who never experienced the PNC in government. And the PNC in government, they always, well, in or out of government, they market themselves well. And they coalesced with persons like Nagamutu and Ramjatan, who made grand but baseless promises. And our people were duped. They bought into it. The sugar workers bought into it. The rice farmers bought into it. Our Amerindian brothers and sisters perhaps bought into it. And the general population bought into it. and elected them. And then they realized very early that they made a mistake. And that is why, as early as 2016, they got a thrashing at the local government elections. And then in 2018, they got a further thrashing at the local government elections. And then in 2020, they lost. So, and the people saw firsthand what they did in their flagrant and blatant attempts to rig the 2020 elections. So these things are fresh in people's minds. But most importantly, the people of Guyana, of all races, in particular, our Afro-Guyanese brothers and sisters, are seeing before them the economic and social transformation that is taking place, not only in the country, but in their own lives. You see, the human being, when they experience the change, it's very difficult to sell them hot air in terms of language when they are seeing actions, because actions always speak louder than words. So what we saw at Babu Jan last Sunday was this paradigm and seismic shift that is taking place in the country, bringing where more and more people who traditionally did not support the PPP are crossing over and are now with us and are anxious to build their numbers. The villages on the East Coast that we did not enjoy great support in are now clamoring to come on board. And that's why we are going to intensify our work, both in government and at the level of the party, to ensure that we take advantage of these changes that are taking place. And that is what is making the opposition and certain civil society organizations very nervous and even desperate. So that work will continue. So let me move on. You would have seen an exchange between myself and the Guyana Human Rights Association. The Guyana Human Rights Association, for several years, I remember when we were in the opposition, I was part of that fight against unconstitutionalism. I was in that fight in the parliament. I was in that fight against the atrocities of APNU AFC. In the courts, I led the battle with the rice farmers, lands being taken away, persons being killed in police custody, the violations of the Constitution, 200 odd taxes and fees, licensing fees being imposed on the backs of the Guyanese people, Soko and SARA being used to intimidate the private sector. And every pocket of this population was targeted. The GRA was used as a weapon against the business community and the farmers. Rice leases for state lands and drainage and irrigation charges were increased by thousands of percentage. The GRA, you check them. They didn't issue statements. They did not issue statements. Maybe one and far. You check how many statements they issued from 2015 to 2020 and how many they have issued from August 2020 to today's date. And you will see that perhaps they have issued more in this last 2.5 years, of August 2020 to today's date, than they may have issued for the entirety of the 5 years, notwithstanding the abuses were 1,000 times more during that 5 year period. During the 5 months when the entire world was up in arms at the attempts to steal elections, when you, the people, couldn't sleep for months, when we were out there battling every day to ensure that the results were not stolen, when the international community was there night and day, looking on and issuing statements. The American embassy may have issued I don't know how many statements, dozens of statements. This organization, I believe, issued two. Two, I believe they issued, based upon their own public statement. In 6 months or 5 months, when the whole world issued dozens of statements, CARICOM alone issued I don't know how many. This Guyana Human Rights Association, by their own admission, I think they said they issued two. Today, we are in government, and what I don't understand is the flagrant double standards. So, Tacoma Ogunse went to Buxton lined up and made one of the most racially provocative, seditious, and riotous speech, basically calling for ethnic violence, calling upon the armed forces to turn their guns against the government and those who do not look like them, calling for resistance, calling essentially for the overthrow of a democratically elected government. These statements have led to civil war in countries. Statements of this type have led to genocide. We saw that in Rwanda. We saw that in Kosovo. We saw that in South Africa. We saw that in Pakistan and India. We saw that in Sri Lanka. This organization that purports to represent human rights, here you're talking about genocide can take place. Hundreds of persons can lose their life or their lives. This organization that purports to represent human rights, of which the right to life is perhaps the most important one, stays silent. Up to date, has not issued a statement about that. But the government enters into a contract, it issues a statement condemning the government, contending that we did not follow the procurement process. When we did follow the procurement process. And the documents are there to establish that. But he sees it more important to criticize the government on the issue of procurement rather than condemn a man who is inciting racial war in the country that can lead to violence against the human being and genocide against an entire race. Where does this organization's priority lies? Let us assume for the purpose of arguments that the procurement was badly done or the Procurement Act was breached. Let us assume that. And he issues a statement. What about which What about this issue with Ogunse? Which one of them can result in greater damage to the people of Guyana? A singular contract that violates the procurement laws, or those who want people to be slaughtered on the basis of their race and are inviting armed forces with guns to turn their guns in that direction? You judge for yourself what type of organization this is. And the government, apparently, in some quarters, according to some quarters, must not respond and must stay silent in the face of what we consider to be unconstructive criticism. The Minister of Finance answered the criticism. And I disclosed that and the GHRA responded to the minister and told the minister how compliant it is with the laws and with financial regulations, not because they want to be compliant, not because they have a duty to be compliant with the law, but because we are a vindictive government and we will go after them. Lo and behold, they owe the government, they owe the state nearly $40 million. They have not complied with the law for 30 years, and nothing have been done against them. Yet, because I made that information public, it's an act of reprisal. How have I reprised? You made a statement that you are in compliance with the law, and I have been able to establish through the official record that you are not. And that's all I did. I made it public. I am reprising against you. I am attacking you. So you can attack me as a public officer, and you can boast that you are lawful and you are legal, and I mustn't respond to your attack. And I mustn't be able to show that you are unlawful and illegal. What kind of unjust, farcical type of environment is that? How can that be fair? How can that be democracy? How can that be free speech? You have free speech to attack me and to tell me how good you are. And I don't have a right to respond and to show that you are not as good as you claim that you are. This is common sense. I see people writing letters in the newspapers condemning me. I have done nothing wrong. The man said that he's legally compliant, his organization is legally compliant, and I have exposed that he's not so. Am I not? I don't have a right to do that. So, and I don't have a right to respond. The government of Guyana doesn't have a right to rejoin and to respond to criticism. Or this thing is a one-way street. Only people outside of government can criticize the government, but the government mustn't respond. If the government responds, the government is intolerant of criticism, the government is recriminating, the government is acting in a reprisal manner. I don't subscribe to those views. I am a lawyer, and I believe that I'm a good lawyer. And there is no part of the law that says that one must remain silent in the face of unjustified attacks. I don't subscribe to that view at all. As I said in a detailed response, which I didn't attack anyone. I wrote in very civil language. I was very sober in my response. And I articulated my views, I believe, with sufficient clarity. And I made it clear that if you criticize the government, which you have a right to do, and which the government welcomes, we have a right that we will exercise. And it is a right to respond. It's a right of rejoinder. And if you claim in your critical exposition that you are possessed of qualities that you do not possess in actuality, then the government has a duty to reveal it. Especially when you are accusing the government of vindictiveness. And that is why you have to make sure that you are in a state of rectitude. And you're not. And then I see the GHRA has responded again to me. And I will respond where they claim that they don't owe that money, that I have misinterpreted the law. You read the law for yourself, they quote it, and I will quote it in my response. The thing says that if you were an existing company before 1991, you had to transition to come under the new act, which was passed in 1991. That if you fail to do so, and you continue to operate as a company, then there's a fine that accrues at a daily rate on the directors. It is very simple. They did not file the certificate of continuance, and therefore they attracted the penalty. And the penalty is for every day that you performed or you continue to perform as a company without compliance. And they have never complied. And that's how they end up with a $40 million penalty. And that's not my opinion alone of the law. I know that they got people to advise them, and those who are advising them or who advise them should know that many judges in the High Court have interpreted that section and have interpreted the same way that I am interpreting it, because it's the only way that it can be interpreted. It is not a complex or complicated or ambiguous provision. It's written very simple, clear language. If you did not do this within this time frame, this is the penalty. And it is calculable in this manner. What is ambiguous about that? So I will respond. Just for the purpose of putting it on the record. And whether the registrar of companies goes after them, that's not a matter for government, that's a matter for the registrar. The registrar of companies administers the Companies Act. And those who are in breach of the Companies Act, the registrar has a duty to ensure that the act is obeyed and complied with, and penalties that accrue are enforced. But when that will happen, or if that happens, you will hear that the government is after the GHRA. But as I said, we will continue to engage. We are a democratic government, and I have said it in my response to them. There is no government since independence, no government of Guyana, that can boast a more democratic track record than successive People's Progressive Party or People's Progressive Party civic governments. None. Those who occupy the seat of government, they stole to get there. And they stole to remain there. Stole ballots, that is. And they stole ballots to remain there. And when they lost elections, they tried to steal to stay in. That is their record. They killed their political opponents, like Walter Rodney. They jailed their political opponents. And I'm not talking about the wild people around the place. I'm talking about recognized politicians. So, we operate in a democracy, and we will fight to maintain that democracy and to protect and preserve and advance that democracy and democratic credentials. That involves exercising our right to respond when there is criticism. Briefly on that procurement of the resident card, that contract was single sourced. These are not contracts that can go to open tendering. They involve matters of national security. They involve national documents that require protective mechanisms that you can't go on the open market to compete for. The same way that we do passports, the same way that we acquire birth certificates, the same way that we acquire national documents. They have to have security mechanism built in. Services of that type universally do not go to public tendering. You choose a qualified, competent company that can provide you the quality of service and protective mechanism that you are satisfied with, and you single source. That is how it is done all over the world. You ever see a government advertise publicly to buy passports? You think the American government does go on the public market to procure passports or green cards or whatever the important documents of that country are, or any other country in the world? These are services that understandably are procured differently from the ordinary other type of services. And we have complied with the Procurement Act in respect of those types of services. That is why we are saying that the allegation is misplaced. Someone said we must take the contract to the Parliament. The issue will be discussed in the Parliament at some point in time, because monies will have to come from the Parliament to pay. So the matter will reach Parliament. But I don't know that the contract has to be taken to Parliament. The contract may be laid in Parliament at some point in time. But anyhow, let me move on to something more important. So I have been asked to speak on a number of issues by members of the press. So a question that has been asked of me is, what changes are going to be made, if any, in relation to electric bikes? Now, you may be aware that there has been an influx and deluge of electric bikes in Guyana. Persons across the country are using these electric cycles. And we have received complaints wide and far that these electric cycles are being used in a manner dangerous to the public, that they present a traffic hazard, that the persons who are riding these cycles are not equipped with helmets or any other protective gear, that they are riding recklessly, and it is a dangerous situation. We have received this complaint from the private sector. We have received this complaint from members of the public. Users of the road have complained. If you look at the social media platform, you will see commentaries and commentaries about this conduct. The government has decided to bring a regulatory framework into place to address the manner in which these electronic bikes or electric bikes are going to operate on our public roadways. So amendments to the traffic laws and or regulations are already in draft for government's approval, and once they're approved, the procedure will have to be followed for them to be promulgated and become enforceable. We already have a traffic accident problem in this country. We already have a high incidence of road carnage. We have already passed legislation to deal with drunken driving and the way people or operators of bars are to conduct themselves vis-a-vis selling of liquor to drivers or potential drivers. You know all about those pieces of legislation which we enacted late last year. The need has arisen for us to make another change, and we are prepared to do so. Someone asked that I discuss the decision in the case filed by Glenn Lall against ExxonMobil. So, Mr. Glenn Lall filed a case against the Attorney General saying that the contract that was entered into is illegal. Every day, well, let me deal with the case first and then we'll move on. So he contends that the contract is illegal because it grants tax exemptions, that the law does not permit, that it violates a whole set of legal principles. And he sued the Attorney General, yours truly. ExxonMobil is an interested party, and they applied to join the proceedings. And the judge allowed them to join the proceedings. The case traveled its normal course, and submissions were filed by all the lawyers, and submissions were heard by the judge. And the judge dismissed the case. Glenn Lall and his lawyers filed submissions. The Attorney General, yours truly, filed submissions. ExxonMobil lawyers filed submissions. We were all allowed to orally present our submissions, and the judge made a ruling. And the judge dismissed Glenn Lall's case. It's as simple as that. So all this pontification that you are seeing in the Kaicho News and on TikTok about how unlawful the contract is, how illegal the contract is, he went to court. And that is the place that he should have gone. He went there and he lost. He asked as orders, he asked the court to order renegotiation of the contract, to set aside the contract as unlawful, to declare the contract as unlawful, to declare provisions of the contract as unlawful. All the things that he keeps saying out there in the Kaicho News and on TikTok, he put it before the courts. And the judge rejected it and dismissed his case. So I believe he indicated an intent to appeal. So I suppose we'll have to now go to the appellate court where the case will continue. So when people are calling upon the government to renegotiate, you cannot renegotiate unless the other side agrees to renegotiate with you. And that, in essence, because a contract was signed. And if the contract was illegal, Glenlal had an opportunity to show the judge how. If the contract could be negotiated, Glenlal himself had an opportunity to explain to the judge how. He failed abysmally to do so. But he would not stop his forays in the press. He continues. Although he went to the proper place where the contract was deliberated upon, interrogated by the judiciary, where his lawyer got an opportunity to throw all the legal arguments that Glenlal speaks about every day and writes about every day. He had an opportunity, the judge gave them months to produce their arguments. Whatever they produced, the judge did not accept it. And of course, we had to submit as well. You see, you can't wait, for example, 4 years after a contract is executed and then move to the court to set it aside, for the simple reason being that billions of dollars would have been expended and invested. Hundreds of parties under that contract would have acquired interests. Dozens of subcontractors would have been retained based upon these contracts. Hundreds, if not thousands of persons' lives now have become associated to this contract. Billions of dollars in investments are being made in relation to this contract. And you take your sweet time, 4 years post, to file proceedings to challenge the contract. And all these thousands of persons whose lives, whose investments, whose economic and social livelihood have now come to be connected to this contract. They are not before the court. They are not before the court. The court will not hear them. Which court will set aside a contract in those circumstances? Unless it is such a flagrantly illegal contract that it has no possibility of standing in law. They were not able to show. If the court were to properly set aside that contract, that court would have had to hear all the parties who have made investments now in relation to that contract because in the 4 years that have elapsed. I keep telling people that the law is not an ass. The law takes into account the interest of everyone who can establish an interest or who are likely to be affected, and responsible judges take that into account when they make decisions. And it is the duty of lawyers involved in the litigation to put these matters before the judge. The government of Guyana is a main stakeholder in this contract and in the oil industry. The people of Guyana are main beneficiaries under this contract. As twisted as I have said it is what was executed before we got into government. Dozens of foreign investors are here in Guyana, and the people of Guyana are reaping the benefits because of this contract. As Attorney General, I have to draw that to the judge. Among the legal arguments as well, because there are legal arguments too in relation to how you can set aside a contract and upon what grounds. You have duress. Did anybody put a gun to Trotman's head when he signed that contract? You have fraud. Was Trotman operating under fraud when he signed that contract? You have mistake. Was Trotman under any mistake when he signed that contract? You have illegality. Was that contract the subject of illegality? Did the contract relate to the production and processing of cocaine? No. So these are the main grounds upon which contracts can be challenged. Did the contract contravene any law? They had an opportunity to put that before the court. None of that was put, at least not to the satisfaction of the judge. I was not the judge. And the case was dismissed. So, that is what I have to report in relation to that matter. Someone asked me to explain the state of the case of the case filed in relation to the NEFPRO Realization Inc. or the motion scales matter. Well, briefly, as you know, that contract was completely illegally done. It went to the tender board after the contract was signed. After the contract was signed, the contractor was to receive, I believe, a 50% deposit. The contractor was paid 100% upon the signing of the contract. As I said, the contract never went to public tendering. And most importantly, the other 50% was to be paid when the scales were delivered to Guyana, but 100% was paid in advance, and no scale ever came. No scale ever came. After we filed the case, after our government filed the case, then someone belatedly said that the scale came but was put in some warehouse at La Parcan. And by the time that information was verified, the warehouse at La Parcan mysteriously went up in flames. The warehouse in which the scale they claim was imported and left went up in flames before that allegation could have been interrogated and investigated. You think this is Nancy's story I'm talking? These are the facts. These are the facts. And one of the main architect in this case, who was at the ministry at the time, jumped on a plane and gone. Jump on a plane and is out of the country. That is what APNU AFC government is doing to us and has done to us. Us meaning the country. While the contractor has received full payment in Jamaica. And when you do further research, this is a contractor who never dealt with this type of business before. Doesn't have any track record of selling scales of this type. And in fact, is connected or was connected as a campaign manager to the AFC. And Patterson was the subject minister. This contractor has a political relationship with the AFC, being some advisor or some publicist or something for them. And Patterson was the minister. Did Mike McCormack and the GHRA issue a statement about this? Did Mike McCormack and GHRA issue a statement about Valda Lawrence walking into the public hospital as Minister of Health and directing the administrator of the hospital to purchase $650 million in drugs from a particular supplier without resort to tendering. Did Mike McCormack and the GHRA issue a statement about that? Did the GHRA and Mike McCormack issue a statement in relation to the rental of a house in Alboyston for the sum of $12.5 million plus VAT by the Ministry of Health from a party member of the PNC, which house was used as a drug bond to store condoms and lubricants. Over $400 million, over $400 million was paid as rent in respect of that premises. You hear what I'm saying? To rent a house, no procurement process, did Mr. Mike McCormack and the GHRA issue a statement in relation to that. Over $1 billion of public monies were used to do work at Durban Park. A company was incorporated comprising of Joseph, I believe, Harmon, Rupert Rupnarain, Larry London. A private company was incorporated to do the construction work. Public monies were used. Nothing went to tender. About $1 billion. In the Auditor General report, $650 million still cannot be accounted for. Nothing went to tender. What was delivered? Look at what was delivered, a couple of wooden stands. Did Mike McCormack and the GHRA issue a statement about that? Nearly $200 million was used to do a feasibility study for the Demerara Harbour Bridge. Never went to tender. The minister, Minister Patterson, directed the Harbour Bridge Corporation to take the money out of the corporation account to pay for this feasibility study to be done. He took it to cabinet, to award the contract. He didn't take it to tender board. Tender board was not involved. He took it to cabinet. Cabinet awarded the contract. $220 million, I believe, $220 million. Feasibility study for the Harbour Bridge. Paid to some French company. Handpicked by Minister Patterson. Money is taken from the Demerara Harbour Bridge Corporation account. No resort to the tender board. Cabinet approved. Money is paid. Where is the report? Where is the report? Did Mike McCormack and the GHRA issued a public statement condemning that? My friends, I can go on whole night. But I just thought that I'll put these things before you because, as I said, and as the General Secretary said at Abuja, we are not going to sit idly by and take these attacks from people who have selective outrage. Chris Rock spoke about selective outrage. Well, these are people with selective outrage. And they have support in certain quarters in the press. Anything they say is published prominently by certain quarters in the press who criticize the government because we respond. Apparently we don't have a right to respond. Certain people are sacred cows So, they are immune. They can speak what they want. And if you respond, you're a dictator and you're intolerant of criticism. Well, I don't share that view at all. I am the recipient of criticisms every day, and I welcome that. But when I choose to respond, I will respond. And that is my right. I know that once you're in public life, and the government as a public institution must suffer scrutiny, must suffer criticism, but we all have rights to respond as well. So, my friends, this hour is finished already, and I just begun to get heat up. But here is where, unfortunately, I have to bid you goodbye, and we will resume this conversation come next Tuesday. I want to thank you very much for spending the last hour with me, and I want to take this opportunity before I close to extend Eid, well, not Eid, but Ramadan Mubarak greetings to my Muslim brothers and sisters, and Navratri greetings to my Hindu brothers and sisters. We will be celebrating Ram Navami, I believe Thursday. So Ram Navami greetings to my Hindu brothers and sisters. Tomorrow night I'm going to be in the Mandir, and hopefully Ram Navami night I'll be in the Mandir as well. And Tuesday we will meet again to continue this very important discourse. Until then, please take care and may God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your evening and stay safe so that we can meet again next week. Thank you very much and good evening.